ordinary day in San Juan, Puerto Rico, 1996. Christmas is coming and the city is packed with shoppers. Then, a massive blast rips through the streets, overturning vehicles and causing widespread devastation. The reason is a mystery, but the effects are terrifyingly obvious. 33 people are dead and more than 80 are injured. Now, using advanced computer simulations, we reveal exactly what went wrong and why no one managed to prevent this catastrophic explosion. Behind every disaster lies a chain of critical events that decides who lives and who dies. Unravel the clues and count down those final seconds from disaster. The Caribbean, Puerto Rico, San Juan. A bustling city in one of the most densely populated islands on Earth. Puerto Ricans are famed for their warm hospitality. But San Juan, like many big cities, is plagued with crime problems. The murder rate in Puerto Rico is twice that of New York City, fueled by a lucrative drug trade. There are even local terrorist groups fighting for independence from the USA. They're willing to use violence for their cause. The worst outrage was in 1981, when a group called the Macheteros blew up 11 government aircraft worth $45 million. More than one bomb factory has been found, but terrorists still pose a threat. They draw their support from blue-collar areas like this, Rio Piedras, a suburb in the southeast of the city. Thursday, November 14th. Sarah Ruiz, an employee in a department store on the main street, Jose Diego, smelled something bad. She decides to take action and sprays perfume in the air to mask the odor. Next door is the Humberto Vidal shoe store, managed by Arturo O'Neill. He's 35 and well-liked by all his staff, including messenger Jose Antonio Umpier.
I've known Arturo since he was young, since he was 12 years old. A very well-mannered guy, a good friend.
Arturo goes to the shoe store basement, where he too smells an unpleasant odor. He thinks it might be gas. Which seems crazy. For the 8 years the company has been in the building, it's never had a gas supply. The shoe store stands on a T-junction. Over the road is a convent, a school, and a Catholic church. On the west side is a street of small stores and restaurants. The Humberto Vidal building itself is unremarkable. A 6-story reinforced concrete structure, 33 meters by 17. It's not just a store, but also the head office for the entire Humberto Vidal operation, a shoe importer and retailer with 32 branches throughout Puerto Rico. There is a large basement, the only one in the area, used for storing shoes. Above is the shoe outlet, a record store, and a jeweler's. The first floor is mostly empty. The upper 4 floors are the company offices. It's a busy, family-run operation with over 30 employees. 8:22 a.m. Worried about the smell, Arturo decides to take no chances. He rings the local gas company, San Juan Gas, which is part of the Enron Corporation. An hour and 20 minutes later, a gas technician is in the building. He switches on a state-of-the-art gas sniffer. The gasman, Ramon O'Farrell, knows a gas leak can be very dangerous, and he checks carefully around the basement. The sensor detects no gas at all. Something else must be causing the smell.
The San Juan Gas Company told Arturo that the smell was from the sewers.
Puerto Ricans have been struggling with the country's crumbling infrastructure for years. Basic utilities, such as sewers, are badly in need of repair. 6 days later, Wednesday, November the 20th, 6:45 a.m. Arturo opens up the shoe store, and the mystery odor is still there. Today, it's stronger than ever. Shortly afterwards, Arturo's younger brother, Orlando, arrives. He's a salesman in another Humberto Vidal store just down the road. The two brothers are very close.
We always had breakfast together, always. We either ate on the way in or took it with us to the store.
But today, Arturo doesn't feel hungry. He's worried about the smell, which seems worse in the early mornings. He asks his brother to check the basement for anything unusual.
I went down the stairs. I couldn't go any further because my eyes misted up. And I came back up.
7:15 a.m. Milagros Saavedra arrives for work. Although she's got a good job as the Humberto Vidal Human Resources Manager, her real passion is in the kitchen.
My dream was to be a master in pastry making, so every weekend I always took classes.
Arturo asks Milagros if she'll check the basement. But Milagros smells something too, and refuses.
I didn't dare. I felt ill. I was scared. I didn't want to go down to the basement.
7:28. Although it makes no sense, Arturo is so concerned, he phones the gas company again. 9 a.m. 90 minutes later, another team from the gas company shows up. This time, their leader is Luis Marquez. Down in the basement, he sniffs the air. He can smell something. There's certainly an odor, but he declares it's not gas. It's the smell of the shoes. Made from plastics and rubber, they're giving off a heady cocktail of pungent fumes. Marquez says it's nothing to worry about. "9:30. Marquez now goes outside. He contacts his base and decides that following standard procedure, he should check the soil under the road for gas. The team drills narrow holes into the ground and inserts a gas-sensing probe. They make 18 holes and detect no gas. 11:45. Satisfied they've done all they can, the brigade's next priority is lunch, back at their base. Back at the shoe store, Arturo is still worried. Everyone who comes seems to have a different theory about what's causing the smell. No one can reassure him over the mystery odor. The longer it persists, the more fearful he becomes that they could be heading for disaster. Thursday, November 21st. Something unusual seems to be happening in a shoe store in a suburb of San Juan, Puerto Rico. 6:45 in the morning. Two contractors arrive at the Humberto Vidal building to do maintenance on the air conditioners. Like many father and son outfits, they don't always see eye to eye.
Father was difficult. That is, we had lots of problems between father and son. That is, we fought, but within 10 minutes we'd already forgotten about it and carried on as normal.
At the front door, they're met by shoe store manager Arturo O'Neill. As soon as he unlocks the door, Arturo smells the pungent odor again. But neither of the air conditioning men think there's anything unusual.
I didn't smell it, and I don't believe my dad smelled it.
Arturo is getting more worried than ever. Is the smell just the odor given off by the shoes? Perhaps he's been working here too long, and his senses are playing tricks on him. He knows he must soon decide if he should open up the store to the public. 7:30 a.m. Another gas company team arrives. They're aware that the shoe store manager says the smell is strongest in the early morning, and they begin to recheck the test holes made yesterday to be absolutely sure. 7:50. Jorge Ibanez Jr. finishes his share of the work. He agrees to meet his father for lunch as usual, but first he has another job to go to. 8 a.m. Directly opposite the store, in the Milagrosa Convent schoolyard, dozens of pupils are about to have an outdoor lesson. Her shopper, Maritza Ramos, is out early with her two young daughters, looking to buy shoes. She's just moved from New York, back to her childhood home nearby. Jocelyn is 4 years old, and Cassandra is almost 3. Like little girls the world over, they're looking forward to getting their new shoes. 8:26. Inside the shoe store, Milagro Saavedra is chatting to co-workers about her pastry classes. Suddenly, she realizes she's going to be late for work in the upper story offices. She rushes up to the third floor reception to punch her time card. At 8:29, manager Arturo O'Neill decides he will open the shoe store to the public, despite his concern about the smell. Jose Antonio, the messenger, is in the 5th floor kitchen having coffee. By 8:30, Maritza Ramos is inside the shoe store with her young daughters. Including the offices and all the stores, there are now nearly 50 people in the Humberto Vidal building. 10 seconds later. The huge blast tosses cars and trucks across the street, crushing passers-by. Miraculously, no one from the school is hurt, although moments earlier the schoolyard was full of children. Within minutes of the explosion, the fire brigade and the police are on the scene. Cameras follow, and the whole disaster is covered on live TV. For over 100 meters around, there's total destruction. A bustling street has become a horrifying disaster zone. Bodies are strewn everywhere. As the dust settles, it becomes clear that the Humberto Vidal building has sustained extraordinary damage. The ground floor, the mezzanine, and second floor are devastated, leaving just the steel and concrete frame. Most of the third floor is intact, although the reception area collapses. The fourth and fifth floors are littered with glass and rubble. Whether people live or die depends largely on where they are when the building explodes. Worst off are those on the ground floor. 2 stories of concrete collapse on top of them. Milagros and the receptionist have fallen 4 floors and lie on a heap of rubble. On the 4th and 5th floors, office staff, including the messenger, Jose Antonio, are alive, but stranded.
I thought we were all going to die.
All the stairwells have collapsed, so there's no way down. Chief Superintendent Pedro Toledo heads the police effort.
People initially were inside the building searching hand, trying to dig the survivors out.
Milagros wakes up. Her friend, the receptionist, lies dead nearby.
I tried to lift myself up, but I couldn't. I was too badly injured.
Eventually, a policeman scrabbles to reach her.
I said to him not to let me die there, alone.
The rescuer realizes she is seriously injured, and she must be moved only with the utmost care. He needs to get help, and has no option but to leave her alone, surrounded by death.
It was very difficult to get through that situation alone.
Eventually, despite her injuries, she's brought to safety. Messenger Jose Antonio is still stuck on the 4th floor.
And I'm thinking the worst, that it's all going to collapse.
Firefighters and police begin a frantic effort to get a ladder to him. Amazingly, the 2 young daughters of Maritza Ramos are found virtually unscathed in the ground floor shoe store. Rescuers rush them to the medical center. The authorities have no idea who the girls are, so they put them on television, hoping to trigger a response.
Hi.
Maritza's sister, Janet, learns of the girls' plight and rushes to the hospital.
It was the first time that they were anywhere alone without their mother.
One of the terrified girls manages to relate what happened.
Jocelyn said to me, a wall fell down on Mummy.
The little girl tells that although her mother was crushed under rubble, she held their hands and told them it would be all right.
With the little life that she had, she'd stood by her daughters, one in one hand and one in the other.
Jocelyn and her sister held on to their mother until a policeman came to their rescue. Only then, when she was sure they were safe, did Maritza Ramos lose consciousness and die. 9:30 a.m. Rescuers have yet to reach the upper floors where Jose Antonio and several others are trapped. Finally, they get a ladder to him and his terrified co-workers.
When they got me down, I had to pass over the top of all those people who were dead. I've never seen anything like it. Never in my life.
Rescuers spend days clambering through the shattered building. But it becomes increasingly clear the chances of finding survivors are slim. Store manager Arturo O'Neill has yet to be found. His younger brother Orlando is distraught.
It isn't easy to wait, to know he's there. How is he? If he died, was it instantly? If not, was he still alive?
5 days after the blast, Tuesday, November 26th. The desperate rescue operation continues, but the death toll now stands at 29. Then comes another crushing blow. Engineers realized the entire building could collapse at any moment. Dozens of rescuers' lives are in danger. The engineers asked the chief of police to halt the rescue operation immediately. They want to make the building safe with a steel framework, a process that could take weeks. Yet even now, rescuers can't rule out the possibility that someone could still be alive.
A fireman told me he heard somebody calling out.
Pedro Toledo faces the toughest choice of his career.
It is a very difficult decision because you had family, people that were missing their loved ones, asking for them.
Hundreds of anxious relatives await his decision, frantically worried that their loved ones are going to be abandoned, buried alive in the rubble. 5 days after a massive blast rocks the city of San Juan, there are still people unaccounted for, and they could be alive under layers of rubble. Relatives are horrified to learn that the rescue mission could soon be called off. Police Chief Pedro Toledo has an agonizing decision. He has to weigh the chances of anyone surviving against the risk of the building collapsing on top of the rescuers. It's a tough call. Toledo feels he has no choice. He orders in the heavy machinery, and the engineers get to work.
It was very difficult to tell them that we had to stop because it was unlikely that they would be alive.
Finally, 27 days after the blast, rescuers get through the rubble right down to the basement. They find the body of Jorge Ibanez Sr., the air conditioning man. 2 days later, Arturo O'Neill's body is the last to be removed. The final toll is 33 dead. So how could such a catastrophe happen? What could have caused such a loss of life?
Could have been a criminal hand. It could have been an accident.
Investigators arrived from several federal agencies. In charge of the team from the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, is Charles Batten. Batten has investigated more than 300 accidents in his 23 years with the agency. Yet even he is shocked by what he sees in Rio Piedras.
You're never prepared for walking into a disaster such as we saw, with the building in shambles, blown across the streets, vehicles overturned. I don't think you ever get used to that.
To add to the horror, local people are terrified a second explosion could happen at any moment. It's down to Batten to find the answers quickly. Now, by rewinding the disaster and going deep into the investigation, we can reveal what really happened to the Humberto Vidal building. How a perfectly ordinary shoe store exploded with devastating force. Advanced computer simulation will take us where no camera can go, into the heart of the disaster zone. At this stage, Charles Batten can rule out nothing.
There was a possibility of a bomb being set in there. There's a possibility of arson.
The most frightening scenario is that the blast was the work of terrorists. Could a group such as the Macheteros have planted a bomb or accidentally detonated a device? After all, they are capable of causing major destruction. Forensic investigators from the FBI and ATF scour the rubble. They know explosives leave a residue, a telltale chemical fingerprint. They take samples from the site. They send all the evidence to their lab for detailed analysis. If a bomb was involved, these tests will prove it. Again, lab tests will provide the answer. While they wait for the results, the investigators move on to other possibilities. What else could have caused the destruction? Could it be arson? 10 years ago, in this very city of San Juan, 97 people were killed when 3 arsonists set fire to the Dupont Plaza Hotel.
Arson, you would start looking at burn patterns in the building. If there were any flammable vapors still present, things of this nature.
Investigators take yet more samples. Now they're looking for flammable liquids, like gasoline or lighter fluid, anything that an arsonist could use to start a fire. Then, when the lab results come in, there's a major turning point in the investigation. Not a single trace of high or low impact explosives or detonation materials is found. Nothing indicating arson is discovered either. Satisfied that this is not a crime scene, the FBI and the ATF hand the investigation over to Batten. He's under tremendous pressure for answers, and he needs them now. In a few days, the safety authorities will demolish the building. His team photograph the rubble from every angle. They study their prints in detail. There must be some clue here. He also has his team interview every witness they can find. They eventually gather 110 statements. Most are in Spanish, and there are problems getting reliable translators. It's a mass of conflicting evidence, but lots of people do mention a bad smell. Batten is running out of options. He's left with one disturbing possibility that common sense would seem to rule out. Despite the fact that he's confirmed the building has no gas supply, and technicians have several times checked for gas leaks, Batten wonders, could Arturo O'Neill have been right all along? What if it was gas? If that's true, then who knows how many other lives are still at stake? How many other buildings throughout the city could be on the verge of exploding? Investigators are starting to narrow their focus into the baffling explosion of a shoe store in Puerto Rico. They've discounted terrorist action and arson. Now they're left with only one disturbing option. Somehow, a massive buildup of some kind of flammable gas must have ignited, destroying the building. There are two possibilities. Propane as supplied by the San Juan Gas Company, or natural gases like methane from the sewers. Only 3 years ago, a methane explosion killed 50 men in a coal mine in South Africa. And the investigators are well aware that a year before that, gas built up in a sewer system in Guadalajara in Mexico. The gas exploded with devastating results, killing at least 200 people. Could this be a rerun of the Mexican blast? Could gas have escaped from the damaged sewers into the building? Batten first examines not the sewers, but what's left of the building itself. It's vital that he pinpoints the exact source of the blast, because this will give him crucial evidence on what kind of gas was involved. Propane is heavier than air, so will sink and gather in invisible pools near the floor. Methane, the main sewer gas, is lighter than air, so will tend to rise. And if it can't escape, will collect at the top of any space available. The gas company suggests that methane could have built up above a false ceiling in the disused part of the first floor. It seems plausible, so the team take a closer look. Then, just below, they find a large steel beam. Despite the blast, it's still intact, and its distorted shape reveals a vital clue.
There was a very large beam there that had been shoved upward.
The beam is bent up a full 15 centimeters from horizontal. It's so curved, the team give it a nickname, the rainbow beam. Immediately they realize only one thing could have caused it. An explosion from below. Could heavier-than-air propane from the gas company be responsible for the carnage? The gas company, part of the powerful Enron Corporation, objects strongly to this line of inquiry. They go on the offensive, insisting they be allowed to take their own samples and photos. Charles Batten refuses. Against this disturbing backdrop, Batten carries on his own investigation. He orders his team to make a series of their own test holes to see if any gas is present. The results are shocking. They find very high concentrations of propane in the soil all around the building. It's a major setback to the gas company's credibility. Now, the challenge intensifies. The gas company points out that neither the building nor its neighbors were connected to the gas supply. So if the culprit was propane, where did it come from? The team look at maps for all the utility pipes under the surrounding streets. It should be fairly simple. But instead,
it was just a maze of pipes.
There are gas pipes, 2 water mains, a sewer main, telephone conduits, and electric conduits. More than 20 pipes in all. Then there's another hitch. As soon as they start to dig, it turns out the blueprints are incomplete.
We found pipes which nobody would claim that was not being used, so it was a pretty big mess.
The team finds leaks in several places. They use inert nitrogen gas to measure the rate of leakage. Charles Batten knows the available space in the basement is 991 cubic meters. So he needs to find a gas flow big enough to fill the room. Nothing they find is big enough. All the leaks combined would fill less than 1/10 of the basement.
We were being somewhat frustrated in the sense that we couldn't find a source that would be likely to have provided the amount of fuel necessary to cause this explosion.
Batten won't give in. Could there be a leak in a gas pipe that doesn't appear on the map? The gas company says no. He insists they look again. And eventually, they do find something.
They did bring out, after considerable searching, a hand-drawn plan of this map that somebody had made when it was installed, but it was never entered onto their mapping system.
Fitted 11 years earlier, an unmarked pipe ends about 24 meters uphill at a fast food restaurant called the Chicken Kingdom. Could this be it? At last, their luck turns. Using safe inert gases, they show the suspect pipe still has a leak. Crucially, it's huge.
In excess of 100 cubic feet per hour of propane gas.
The investigators discover the pipe was installed in a tight curving bend, putting it under abnormal strain. Then there's another surprise. Below the pipe, they find a new water main. Batten has a hunch. After the water main was laid down and the earth replaced, that backfill must have settled. Now there would be little to support the plastic pipe above. Already stressed from being bent into a curve, it could take no more.
As time passed, as traffic loads increased, as rainwater helped to settle the soil, the gas line lost its foundation for support.
Eventually, the plastic pipe fractured. But Batten still has to discover how gas from the fractured pipe could reach the shoe store. He knows that propane can flow underground, like water. So the team pumped test gases through the leak to see where they end up. As expected, they do travel. of least resistance, they seep through looser soil around any underground pipes in their path. They migrate downhill around the water main. Batten realizes that some of the leaking propane could then jump across to electric ducting that leads to a meter room in the Umberto Vidal building. At the end of this lies the shoe store basement. Since it's the only basement in the area, it would act like a well, trapping and storing the gas.
And it's a beautiful place for propane to accumulate as it leaked from down the hill.
At last, Batten has a likely mechanism for getting gas into the shoe store basement. But he still has a major problem. If so much gas was leaking into the basement from the ground outside, why did none of the gas company's teams detect it? The gas company's test holes are still there in the ground. The NTSB rechecks these to see if some terrible mistake was made. The findings are a shocking indictment of the gas technicians. No hole is more than 46 centimeters deep, too shallow to reach the deadly gases migrating below.
Knowing that the gas main was down about 3 to 4 feet deep, we knew that propane being heavier than air, you would not detect it in that borehole.
The gas company deny the holes up this shallow. Batten interviews the gas brigade technicians about this. They nearly all believe 46 centimeters is the correct depth.
So it was not surprising that they did not find propane gas or any combustible gas around this area.
After this extraordinary finding, Batten wonders what else went wrong. Why, for example, did the sniffer machine not detect any gas in the basement? An interview reveals the reason. To work properly, the sensor must first be switched on outside in uncontaminated air. Only then will it detect propane or any other gas.
They were first opening and operating their equipment once they were in the building, so the fact that their equipment did not show evidence of gas was not surprising.
At last, Batten knows how so much gas could build up undetected. But how did the explosion start? There must have been a spark. They check every light switch and the elevator machinery. No fault is found. Then, in the basement, near the air conditioning unit, investigators find a telltale sign of an explosion. Specks of black residue that mark where the blast first began. Further reinforcing evidence comes when they find the thermostat. The control wires have melted.
And that would indicate to us that was near the source of ignition.
As far as they can tell, this is very near the spot where the body of air conditioning man Jorge Ibanez Sr. was found. Batten believes this is the final piece of the puzzle, solving the mystery of why 33 people died. Now, by rewinding the events leading up to that fateful day, we can finally reveal what really happened to the Umberto Vidal building. Why a deadly gas leak occurred, how the gas migrated, and why repeated tests failed to reveal it, leaving the people of Rio Piedras seconds from disaster. "11 years before the explosion, the gas company installs a gas supply to a restaurant 24 meters from the shoe store. It's bent into a curve, putting the pipe under permanent stress. 6 years later, the water company installs a new main. They discover the unmarked gas pipe and fill in badly beneath it, robbing it of vital support from below. Gradually, the infill subsides. A couple of weeks before the disaster, the pipe finally fractures. It starts leaking propane at over 2.8 cubic meters an hour. Heavier than air, the hidden killer migrates downhill, seeping through soil around other pipes and conduits. Slowly, invisibly, it ends up in the basement of the Humberto Vidal building. A week before the disaster, store manager Arturo O'Neill rings the San Juan Gas Company to complain of the smell. The same day, gas company technician Ramon O'Farrell unpacks his gas sniffer somewhere in the building. He doesn't zero it outside in fresh air, so it fails to detect any gas in the basement. The next day, a gas brigade sink numerous test holes in the road outside. 5 days later, only 1 day before the disaster, another brigade does the same. No hole is deeper than 46 centimeters, not deep enough to detect escaping propane as it flows around pipes beneath them. A simple misunderstanding about how two machines work means massive quantities of gas go undetected as they collect in the shoe store basement. Up to 7 cubic meters of gas has now flowed into this basement area. The day of the explosion. 1 hour and 45 minutes to go. Arturo O'Neill lets in the air conditioning man. 50 minutes to disaster. Finished with his part of the job, Ibanez Jr. leaves his father in the building. At some unknown time, Ibanez Sr. descends to the basement to work on the air conditioning unit. 2 minutes from disaster. Milagro Saavedra rushes from the shoe store to the 3rd floor. Seconds from disaster. Ibanez Sr. flicks a switch on the air conditioning unit. Near the floor, a spark from the thermostat ignites the propane that has been gathering over recent weeks. It explodes with tremendous force. The release of energy is equivalent to up to 148 kilograms of TNT. "33 people lose their lives in one of the biggest disasters Puerto Rico has ever experienced. But then comes a twist in the tale. The gas company, heavily implicated in the NTSB's preliminary report, fights back with its lawyers. They insist the whole investigation is flawed and the blast could have been caused by sewer gas after all. If Charles Batten can't find solid proof of a propane explosion, the gas company will be off the hook. Justice and the safety of millions of Puerto Ricans are now at stake. Investigator Charles Batten is certain he's uncovered the cause of the massive explosion in San Juan. But there are still question marks over the investigation. Could the gas that exploded have been methane from the sewers? Batten has, after all, shown the possibility of a leak and how it could have traveled into the building. He's convinced that methane is very unlikely to have caused the explosion. But he hasn't yet disproved the gas company's hypothesis. Finally, 6 months later, after the building has been demolished, the clinching evidence is discovered lying in the site. This photo shows the underside of a beam that used to be part of the basement ceiling. It bears strange marks. These, crucially, are shoe prints, final proof that the blast originated at near floor level in the basement.
And lo and behold, on the underside of a surviving beam were the footprints of shoes which had been blown upward.
It's the evidence Charles Batten has been looking for. Methane could not have been the cause. Being lighter than air, it would have collected at the top of the room and blown the shoes downwards. At last, after 6 months of painstaking work, Batten has confirmation his theory is correct. Nine years on, many of those who lost loved ones are still struggling to come to terms with the disaster.
I haven't gone back to Rio Piedras. I can't, because it still hurts.
Orlando O'Neill still works for Humberto Vidal, but he finds it too painful to talk about life today without his brother. Milagro Saavedra is lucky to be alive.
It took about 2 years to try to put me back together.
But she's still determined to become a pastry chef. Jose Antonio Umpier, the messenger, is unable to work.
Still, I'm under the treatment of a psychiatrist. Sometimes I'm 3 or 4 nights without sleeping.
Some, though, have found a way. Jorge Ibanez Jr. has a spiritual attitude to the death of his father.
I feel him at my side. He has never left me, and I don't believe he is going to leave me.
The NTSB's damning report concludes that the San Juan Gas Company did not train its employees well enough and recommends they be retrained and tested regularly. The gas company denies the allegation, but is sued by many of the victims' families. Eventually, their claims are settled out of court, without any admission of liability. The disaster and its investigation result in major improvements. 90% of the city's underground gas lines are removed, and a new computerized mapping system is introduced. The most significant outcome is that now in Puerto Rico, before anyone digs up the road, a new system guarantees one phone call will tell them exactly where everybody else's pipes are buried. This should prevent the recurrence of the sort of gas fracture that caused the Humberto Vidal disaster. In the rest of the world, underground delivery of propane gas is uncommon. Natural gas is almost universally preferred. It's less likely to collect below ground. But in Puerto Rico, the hope is that awareness, vigilance, and education will prevent a huge gas explosion ever happening again.